but they violated the law. These politically motivated pardons of FACE Act violators, as well as January 6ers and dozens of white-collar criminals and fraudsters, are all part of a political strategy that's got nothing to do with justice. And now this is the equivalent of the government giving people a green light to go out and break the law. And indeed, there are numerous reports that President Trump has been promising pardons to everyone who works for him.
That last line is the whole story. Not pardons based on justice, pardons based on loyalty. That is what Raskin just said out loud in Congress, and the record backs him up. Flynn pleaded guilty twice. Lost his civil case in court. Trump's DOJ settled it anyway, $125 million of your money. Carter Page lost 4 lawsuits, got $125 million. The Ashli Babbitt family, $5 million. And Trump himself is now suing the IRS for $10 billion. This isn't a pardon system, it's a payout system, and it is running on public funds. If you want this tracked every day, hit subscribe. Now watch how Raskin built that case from the floor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and I want to thank all our witnesses for joining us today. We are in a weird time warp groove with our friends across the aisle. Most of their energy is now focused on pardoning people who attacked the Capitol on January 6th, wounding and injuring 150 of our police officers, disfiguring and disabling some of them for life. Their time is spent vacating the criminal convictions of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers who engaged in seditious conspiracy against the U.S. government, which means conspiring to overthrow and put down the government. And now the Department of Justice wants to vacate those convictions that were handed down by unanimous juries. They want to give millions of dollars to convicted criminals like Michael Flynn, for example, President Trump's disgraced former national security advisor. They gave him $1.5 million for a lawsuit he brought against the government and already lost. He lost it in court, and nonetheless, they wrote him a check for $1.5 million. They wrote a check for another $1.5 million, or $1.25 million, to Carter Page, who unsuccessfully sued the government for damages, losing 4 different lawsuits, and nonetheless, they just wrote him a check of the taxpayers' money, $1.25 million. Now they're all lining up at the trough. A lot of the January 6th insurrectionists, they want their $1.25 million payout. And Donald Trump has sued the IRS for $10 billion. He wants 80% of the IRS budget that he's suing the government for. And he's also suing for the search warrant handed down by an independent, neutral magistrate, where they executed a search on Mar-a-Lago and found lots of classified documents and confidential and secret documents he shouldn't have. And he's suing there for several $100 million as well. So it's a big piggy bank for them. So now we are having our 3rd hearing about the claim. I'm not sure I fully understand it, but I think the claim is that the activists who forcibly blocked health clinic entrances and prevented women from accessing lawful reproductive health services were somehow unjustly prosecuted under the FACE Act, which they intimate is unconstitutional, but 8 different federal circuit courts have upheld its constitutionality as a perfectly lawful exercise of Congress's powers under the Commerce Clause and not in any way in violation of the First Amendment, okay? But they continue to want to pander to people who think that they never should have been prosecuted for their criminal conduct. So this hearing is an after-the-fact justification for President Trump's anti-choice pander pardons, which took place last year. As one of his first acts in office, he pardoned nearly 24 people convicted again by unanimous juries of FACE Act-related crimes, including one of the witnesses here today, Ms. Edel. As with the January 6 rioters and insurrectionists that he pardoned, Trump and his MAGA allies are attempting to rewrite history to portray convicted criminal conduct as peaceful protest and to cast the dedicated public servants who sought to protect patient safety as the villains. So let's discuss some of the facts of Ms. Edel's case. She was pardoned by President Trump and invited, I think, as an example of the so-called peaceful protesters. A jury convicted her, along with 6 co-conspirators, of federal civil rights offenses, including a FACE Act violation arising out of their blockade of a reproductive health care clinic in Sterling Heights, Michigan, in August of 2020. A jury of her peers, not deep state prosecutors, a jury of her peers drawn from her community, convicted her by unanimous vote after a trial borne by an impartial federal judge. She was one of 2 defendants convicted of another FACE Act violation arising out of their actions in yet another clinic blockade in Saginaw, Michigan. Now, I have no problems with the fact that Ms. Edel and others like her have strong moral convictions about this, as did Martin Luther King and John Lewis. They had strong moral convictions about Jim Crow apartheid and segregation in America, and they participated in civil disobedience. They violated various trespass laws in different cases, and they were arrested for it, and they were willing to accept their punishment as the price for trying to get a law they considered or actions by the government reversed and to dismantle racial segregation. But what these protesters have a problem with is other people accessing their own health care. The civil rights protesters weren't trying to stop people from getting health care, and they were willing to nonetheless accept the consequences of having a sit-in or whatever. But here, they don't seem to want to accept it, the fact that they violated the law. And in fact, they violated the law precisely in order to prevent other people from exercising their constitutionally protected rights to health care. That's exactly what they were doing. So I'm afraid there's a huge difference between them and other people who have participated in civil disobedience in the past. We got a statement from the founder and operator of the Sterling Heights Clinic, who was present that day, which I'm going to enter into the record in full, that described what happened. She writes this: "Perhaps the most dangerous and appalling episode of clinic violence I've ever experienced since the FACE Act became law took place in August of 2020. Our Sterling Heights Clinic was blockaded by extremists who prevented me and other staff from entering the clinic. Patients were stuck in their cars, including 3 women who were coming in for medical abortions following the detection of fatal fetal anomalies. One woman was actively losing amniotic fluid and was scheduled for the second day of a 2-day procedure. She needed immediate medical attention. She huddled with her mother and her husband trapped in the parking lot while extremists plastered signs of fake fetuses on her car windows and shouted, 'God loves you, God loves your baby.' And the woman cried back, 'I know God loves me, I know God loves my baby, but my baby is dying.' Her baby was missing most of its brain and had no kidneys." This woman later shared her powerful testimony at trial. As 8 different federal circuit courts have found, Congress has the power under the Commerce Clause to protect people against being harassed and interfered with as they go to get medical attention. The FACE Act is a legitimate exercise of congressional power, and these people were properly arrested and prosecuted for perhaps their very morally, sincerely held views.
Here is what actually happened in that hearing room. Republicans called it from tool to weapon, framing the FACE Act itself as the villain. They invited a pardoned convict to sit at the witness table as proof of peaceful protest, and they gave that framing a congressional hearing. Raskin just dismantled it with the facts they didn't want on the record. 8 federal circuit courts upheld the FACE Act. The convictions came from unanimous juries, not federal prosecutors, not Biden appointees, juries. One of those defendants was convicted in not 1 but 2 separate clinic blockades, and the woman whose dying baby was surrounded in a parking lot by protesters screaming at her car window. She testified at trial. That is the record Trump's pardons erased. But the bigger story is the money. Flynn lost his case. DOJ paid him $125 million. Carter Page lost 4 cases. DOJ paid him $125 million. Ashli Babbitt's family got $5 million. And now a second Flynn settlement is being finalized. Raskin has already opened a formal congressional investigation and demanded documents from the acting attorney general. What Raskin is building in public is a paper trail. Every check written to a Trump ally, every conviction vacated, Every hearing held to legitimize a pardon, it all goes on the record. Trump's people are collecting, and Raskin is counting every dollar. That image from this hearing, a congressman reading aloud the testimony of a woman whose baby had no kidneys and no brain, while the majority holds a hearing to apologize to the people who blocked her from getting care, that does not age well. And the pardon machine is still running. If this matters to you, subscribe and share, because this record is going to keep growing.